You know, I have two addictions. One of them is coffee. The other one is punishment. Hello again and welcome back to Mimsy Park. It's time for another MANIC movie reviews, and you guessed it, we are on installment number 2 of this Disney live-action remakes nightmare series that I've locked myself into. So far in this series, we have only done Cinderella for the series. Technically, there are 2 reviews though, but I think from this point on, we're just going to ignore the fact that I've done Aladdin already, because A, I'm sick of having to say it over and over and over again. If you've made it into installment number 2 of this series, you probably know by now that I already have one out there about Aladdin. If you know I have one out there about Aladdin and you've watched it, you know I think it was garbage. Last time we did Cinderella. Cinderella was not my least favorite. I did not hate Cinderella. I did not love Cinderella, but I did not hate Cinderella. I think it's really important that we do cover a base here. This is not me going back over these movies and going, this was a bad movie. These movies are supposed to be live action remakes. They've now gone around to live action adaptations, but you know what? You already said remakes, so we're gonna treat these as remakes. And considering the fact that you're not giving them new names, you're going to give them the exact same name as the one before, not revisited or anything like that. I'm going to assume you're going off the original movie. The Jungle Book is not the original Jungle Book. I did not like the Jungle Book. Again, I'm watching these from a Disney movie fanatic standpoint. The fanaticism might explain my frustration and my anger with so much of it. And when they're good, I'll say that they're good. So we're going to go about these in very critical ways, and it's going to be critical based off the original movie that you're supposed to be remaking. And this was not a remake, it's a retelling of the original story, but you're not doing it that way. You're doing it as a remake. And as a remake, it sucks. So let's get into why the Jungle Book as a remake sucks so hard. First of all, so much of this movie felt like an homage to The Lion King. That's what it felt like, because there are so many scenes where you're watching it and you're like, this is The Lion King. Like, they did this in The Lion King. Everything about it feels like they just kind of ripped pieces out of The Lion King and adapted it for the Jungle Book. I'm not looking forward to the live action remake of The Lion King already. I don't need it in the Jungle Book. From the very beginning, I did not like this movie, and it did not get better. And I've been trying to approach these with a more open mind, because I understand I have a very close-minded view of how these movies should be done, a very critical view of how these movies should be done. And it's why I think Cinderella, I found things that I liked in Cinderella, because I tried it with a more open mind than I did, say, with like Aladdin and a lot of remakes, because I have an issue with all these remakes just from different companies and everything. I went into this with the same open mind that I went into Cinderella with, and I came out of Cinderella actually liking aspects of Cinderella. I came out of the Jungle Book happy that the credits were rolling. From the very opening scene, the shaky cam. Oh my God, the shaky cam. It almost made me sick from the very outset. It's overdone. It's way too much shaky cam. Nobody sees that shaky when they're running. The whole scene at Peace Rock, from the second it started, that whole scene, I looked at Brittany and I went, this feels like The Lion King. And it does. The whole thing felt like The Lion King adapted for the Jungle Book. That's how I would sum up this entire movie. If you look at it from that perspective, it's basically the same story. One of my biggest issues with this movie is the same issue that I have with the Lion King live action remake, is there's nothing live action about this movie except Mowgli and maybe a couple different scenes here and there as far as like environments and sets go. But for the most part, it's super duper overproduced CGI. It looks cool in certain scenes and in certain settings and everything, but for the most part, it's super overproduced CGI. And when I say overproduced, I mean like it's almost like when you see a picture that's almost got too much sharpening to it. It's kind of like that. It's just like jammed down your throat with brightness and color. And I know joy and brightness and color used to be Disney's thing, but it's not their thing anymore because they're not making children's movies anymore. They're not telling children's stories. Like there's nothing fun and really comical about this movie except for a couple different scenes. This movie is lacking all the character and all the fun that the original one had. It lacks all of that. This is an action movie, and that's what Disney's really making now, is they're making action movies for the people that enjoyed these movies that they had growing up. The problem is they're not the movies we had when we're growing up. And that's the biggest problem. They're making action movies now. It's like they started making Star Wars and they're like, let's carry through with that. It's kind of like a big problem with pop music where you have basically 4 or 5 producers making all the pop music that you hear. That's why you start hearing a lot of similarities and things start to sound the same. They get stagnant, they get stale, and they're no fun anymore. I will say, as far as the CGI, the animation, it's pretty good. Putting the overproduced aspect of it aside, it's not bad, especially considering it comes out of 2016. But there's certain scenes, certain moments, and they're not like full scenes. They're like little moments in scenes where the CGI is just not good. Like when Bagheera and Shere Khan are fighting at the end, there's like that one of them's chasing the other one. It's really bad. The meeting that takes place where they basically decide that Mowgli needs to go plays out a little bit differently in this one. In this one, they're discussing it and Mowgli comes up and basically makes the suggestion to leave. He makes the suggestion to leave and they run with it almost immediately, like they were waiting for him to suggest it. Fine. Well, no, not fine. The whole point of the original was that he wanted to stay. From the very beginning, he wanted to stay. He wanted to stay in the jungle because it's all he's ever known. But in this one, it doesn't play out that way. Yet, after the meeting, they leave, and him and Bagheera start talking, and Bagheera tells him, I'm going to take you back to the village with Man. And he starts acting surprised, like, dude, you just suggested leaving. Where did you think they were going to take you? What, you just thought they were going to hide you off somewhere for a little while and then bring you back? Like, it didn't make sense. It was a huge loophole to me. The first sign to me that this movie did not have the character and the, not characters, but overall character and fun that the original had, and the whimsical feeling that the original one had. The elephants. The elephants are basically revered as gods in this movie, and again, we come back to what my issue was with the mice in Cinderella. They have no voices, they have no personality, they have none of what was fun about them in the original. Not just the military aspect, but just their character, their personalities, the voices. They're just elephants in this one, and they're revered like gods, and they're held to this high standard, like the characters bow to them whenever they're passing by, and they're treated almost like the elves in Lord of the Rings. Why change that? It's such a big part of the original. Why change that? And yet again, we come around to, this is a retelling of the original story. This is not a Disney adaptation of the original story. And that's what the original movie was. It's a Disney adaptation of the original story. But moving along after the elephants, which is clearly, I think, my first real big issue with this movie, which is pretty early on, not a good sign of what's to come. Having Shere Khan in there from the very beginning is just, in the original you had this mystery behind Shere Khan and there's this build up to Shere Khan. You don't have that in this one. He's there from the very beginning, kind of like Scar, takes over the wolf pack, kind of like Scar, and then starts hunting down Mowgli, trying to get rid of him, kind of like Scar. And the ravine scene where Shere Khan is chasing Mowgli is straight out of The Lion King. It is straight out of The Lion King. Downscaled, different animals, straight out of The Lion King. I don't know if they didn't notice that in the dailies or the writing or anything, I will say the scene where he finally gets away from Shere Khan and their wildebeest, I think he's on the back of, or whatever he's on the back of, oxen, yaks, I don't know. But when they're walking along, there's that mudslide and he gets pushed off into the water. It's a good thing the wolves taught him to swim so well. He swims, he keeps afloat and everything while he's going down like a super torrential river, and he swims. Who taught him that? Scarlett Johansson as Ka is terrible. I am not a huge Scarlett Johansson fan anyway, and her voice does not work with Ka. That's fine, you want to make him a girl, whatever. I really, really don't care except for accuracy's sake. That's the only reason I really care. But he's also in the original story a friend of Mowgli and actually helps Mowgli. So you can't sit here and go, oh, we're adapting the original story and only nitpick and make it that way when you want it to be that way. Either you do it or you don't. And it's why I'm critiquing these movies and reviewing these movies from the aspect of them being remakes of the original movies, because it's clear that Disney only says they're adaptations of the original story when that explains why they changed something. They didn't do it because they wanted to make it new. They did it because they wanted to do it, because they felt the need to do it. And then they say, oh, well, it wasn't in the original story. Well, guess what? Ka's a boy in the original story, and he's a friend. So we're gonna go ahead and go back to reviewing these as remakes, and you can keep telling me they're adaptations of the original stories. They're not. Scarlett Johansson's voice does not fit Ka's demeanor, does not sound evil. It just sounds like her talking. That's all it sounds like. It sounds like her talking, and it doesn't fit the character at all. And a lot of it is because they didn't do anything to her voice to make it sound evil. It doesn't become evil or start feeling evil until Mowgli starts getting hypnotized. And the effects of when he's hypnotized are actually very cool. It does talk about a kind of a backstory with his dad and Shere Khan having attacked his dad, which is totally unnecessary and really not relevant to anything except the scene itself. In my opinion, the only reason Scarlett Johansson is in there is because they wanted to make Ka a girl and they needed somebody famous to voice. That's it. There are so many better female actors that you could have put in there than her, and that's where my issue really comes in, is that her voice does not fit. It just doesn't fit. Boy, girl, doesn't matter. Her voice does not fit. Another voice that did not work for me, surprisingly, was Bill Murray. Bill Murray as Baloo doesn't work, and I love Bill Murray. I love Bill Murray. I don't know if it's the way it's written or the way he was directed on the character, but it does not work. Not in the way that the original one did. Baloo's demeanor, his energy, everything about him is just wrong. It doesn't fit. It's not the character you're used to. It's certainly not the character I fell in love with. Again, it just falls flat. It's another aspect of this movie that just falls super flat for me. There is such a blatant connection between Baloo and Winnie the Pooh in this, with the honey, and not just the honey, but the way he talks and the way he addresses the honey and explains it to Mowgli of why he wants it. It's clearly a Winnie the Pooh reference. I don't know why this movie has so many references to other Disney characters. I don't know if they're trying to create a Disney character universe, like they're doing with Marvel. Baloo is basically Winnie the Pooh in this. Yet again, just like Cinderella, the songs are not to be found, except as little inserts here and there. Background music, maybe. The bare necessities, Baloo whistles it a little bit, and then they do sing it for a little bit in the river, I will say that, but it just feels very shoehorned in. It's short, and it's just like, here, we referenced it. The thing about these older movies that was so special was the music. It was a huge part of why these movies brought people in, and something you could connect to. It was one of the most important things to Walt Disney, was the music. It was a staple of every little thing he did, music, because he knew how powerful it was to have it in the movie. And yet we find none of that in Cinderella, and we find very little of it in the Jungle Book. And I know I said that there's none of it in this movie. There's some of it in this movie, but again, it all falls flat. The whole vibe I got from Baloo was that he was using Mowgli from the very outset. In the original, there's a friendship there and they get very close. In this, it's more Baloo wants honey, because Winnie the Pooh, I guess. Mowgli can get it for him. Mowgli does get it for him, and then he keeps him around to get more, but you never get the feeling that they really connect until it's basically said out loud in the dialogue. And that's lazy writing is what that is. That's just lazy writing. The scene where Baloo has to kind of push Mowgli away is basically the Jungle Book version of the Free Willy, you stupid fish. Like, it's that. It's the same thing that now you see in a lot of satire, and they make fun of it because it's been overused so much. Well, not in this one. In this one, the writers decided to go ahead and actually use it as the way of Baloo pushing Mowgli away. Which, again, it's just, it feels lazy. It just feels lazy. It feels like you're using tropes to push along a story that you want to be genuine and you want to be heartfelt, but it's not. It's empty. It's soulless. I will say when we come to King Louie, there is, before you even see King Louie, there's a cowbell, which I found pretty funny because Christopher Walken voices King Louie, which, again, doesn't work at all. The jazziness and everything of the original monkeys isn't there. It's not there. He's not even the same type of monkey anymore, which I knew that going into this, but even that was just, it felt like a change for change's sake. It didn't add anything. I don't know if it was just because, like, in the original, King Louie is this orangutan, but you understand that he's got power and respect. And I don't know if it was just lazy writing that made them make him so big, so that he just commands it because of his size, but it doesn't work. Even when they're singing the song, it doesn't work because it's that same jazzy feel, it's that same jazzy song, but there's no hipness to them. And when you leave that out, again, we're talking about a character that had he has such a big presence in the original one, and he has a big presence in this one because it forces it on you visually, not because you have fun with him, not because the characters have this massive respect, but because he's intimidating, his size is big, and it forces you to look at him that way rather than developing him as a character to be seen that way. King Louie is basically a more personable King Kong. That's pretty much what he comes out to be. And by the time we get to King Louie in this movie, it's starting to feel like 10,000 BC written and filmed by Disney. That's the vibe that it really has when we get to him. And the whole movie just feels like it's just a bunch of references from other movies. The whole thing feels like a lazy effort. Except from the animators. The animators did a good job on a lot of this, but as far as just the movie in general, the more it goes along, the flatter it falls and the emptier it feels. There were side characters in the original, but ones I really, really liked. The buzzards are not in this at all. And I can only imagine it's because the buzzards almost entirely were a comic edition. They were funny, they were fun, it made it fun and whimsical. And again, as we established already, Disney's basically making action movies now. And it's really upsetting because this, along with so many of these originals, don't work as action movies. They work as fun, whimsical kids movies, or whatever you want to call them. I mean, I call them kids movies, but I still enjoy them as an adult almost on a daily basis still. One of these gets watched almost on a daily basis. Again, Kaa. We come back to Kaa again. That first scene is the only thing you see from Kaa. And I know he wasn't a big character in the original, but he was still fun, and he still had a presence, and you still fell in love with him as a character. And that's the thing about the original. Every character you encounter in the original, you kind of fall in love with in a different way. Not some more than others, but every one of them you kind of fall in love with in a different way. And this one was more like they just needed to push Mowgli through the story. The whole part where Mowgli finds out that Akela dies and goes back to the village, he's back there in like a heartbeat. He spent all this time traveling and he's back there in like a matter of minutes. He's back at the village in a matter of minutes. And again, it just felt like we need to jump to this scene. We need to get to this next point in the movie. We need to get here, and then we'll worry about the rest later, or we'll skip over and hope people didn't notice. It was a huge, that's small. It was a huge hole for me. The entirety of that last battle is super drawn out, super built up, super overproduced. They go way over the top. It's basically the way Martin Scorsese put it, basically saying that these movies feel like theme park rides. And he said it about the Marvel movies, which, yes and no, but that's what this felt like. It didn't feel like a movie that they put a lot of time and effort into. Shere Khan's death feels like another Lion King reference in this movie. The whole thing feels like the Lion King set in the Jungle Book, and it feels like that multiple times throughout the movie. It was not just me that noticed it. Brittany, I watched these movies with Brittany because I like to get that perspective, because she does not have the perspective I've got as far as being a Disney fanatic. Even she said the same thing. It feels like the Lion King meets the Jungle Book. And to really cap off everything, the ending. The ending is nothing like the original Disney ending. The original Disney ending is nothing like the original story, which is fine, because from what I understand, the original story is pretty racist. From what I understand, I have not read it. I have read excerpts from it, and I did a little bit of research for the episode, but the ending of the original Jungle Book, Mowgli goes to the village. The village does not want Mowgli, sends him back away to the forest, or into the jungle. The family that takes Mowgli and gets tortured. Mowgli gets some elephants, and basically everybody dies. I mean, that's a generalization, but this ending, he doesn't go to the village in the way the book ends. He doesn't go to the village in the way the original movie ends. He just willingly goes back. Again, if you're going to call them remakes, which they've done many times, remake the parts that are important. Remake the parts that people care about. Otherwise, make them new versions. They've done it before, make them new versions. Don't just call them this, tout them as remakes, and then not remake them. You adapted it, you didn't remake it. A remake is going to be true to the original, and this is not true to the original, except for where it's convenient for Disney. So overall, I did not like the Jungle Book. I will not be rewatching it like someday might happen by accident with Cinderella. It was not good. I didn't enjoy it in the beginning. I didn't enjoy the middle. I didn't enjoy the end. There were a couple little things here and there that made it watchable, but they were not things that make a good movie. They were surface reasons, like the CGI and stuff like that. But again, it's mostly animated. It's not a live action movie. It's an animated movie with live action elements. And we're probably going to see more of that the further we get through this series. Again, this is not, this series is already getting hard to get through. We're gonna get through it. Like I said last time, we're gonna get through it, but it's just, they're just ruining these movies. These remakes are just garbage so far. Cinderella wasn't bad. I don't know which one's up next. Let's find out which one's up next. So technically the next one that we have up is Beauty and the Beast. I've heard good things about Beauty and the Beast. I've heard it's true to the original, that it's almost nearly a shot-for-shot remake, which makes more sense as a remake. I hope it's good, because Beauty and the Beast is in my top 3 of favorites. So hopefully they don't ruin that. I will say Alice Through the Looking Glass was actually in between the Jungle Book and Beauty and the Beast. It's actually right in the middle, but it is not a remake of the original. It is a part of the Alice in Wonderland universe. So we'll be skipping over that one, because again, we're starting this off after Disney made the announcement that we're going to be remaking all of the original classics. The Tim Burton Alice in Wonderland was not in there. I actually really enjoyed that one. I'll have to go back and watch it to make sure I enjoyed it, but I remember actually enjoying that one. So with that said, do stay tuned for the 3rd installment of this Disney Remakes Nightmare whatever series that I'm pushing myself through for the sake of everybody else, for the sake of your entertainment. It truly does mean the world to me that you guys care at all to watch these, that I can bring entertainment to you guys, especially with everything that's going on right now. I hope this does help entertain you guys as we get through this whole coronavirus nightmare that everybody is going through right now. So with that said, you know the drill. Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, leave comments, suggestions on other movies. They don't have to be Disney related movies. I am all about watching movies that you guys want to suggest and then doing a review on them. Like I said, subscribe, like, comment, stay tuned for more, and I will see you guys next time.